Have you ever had one of those moments where you stood up, took a step, and felt just a little less steady than you used to? Maybe it was just a small wobble. Maybe you caught yourself on the wall or the edge of a chair and brushed it off, telling yourself, I'm just being clumsy today. But what if I told you that sometimes it's not your balance, it's what's on your feet? A lot of people don't realize this, but every year, hundreds of thousands of older adults are hospitalized because of falls. And one of the biggest hidden causes isn't poor health or weakness. It's something far more ordinary. It's footwear. The very shoes that feel comfortable, familiar, even harmless, can quietly take away your stability, your confidence, and eventually your independence. Now, I know that might sound a little dramatic. After all, you've been walking your entire life. You've worn all kinds of shoes, sandals, sneakers, slippers, and you've managed just fine. But here's the truth that most people are never told. Your feet are not the same as they were at 40, or even 50. As we get older, the soft padding under our feet starts to thin out. That natural cushion you used to have, it's not as strong anymore. The nerves that help you feel the ground and keep your balance begin to lose sensitivity, and your joints become less forgiving when something is even slightly off. So the shoes that once felt perfectly fine can suddenly become dangerous. I want you to imagine your feet as the foundation of a house. If that foundation becomes unstable, even just a little, the entire structure above it starts to shift. Your knees compensate, your hips adjust, your back tightens, and before you know it, one small issue turns into a chain reaction that affects your whole body. That's why today we're going to talk about something incredibly important. We're going to walk through 7 common footwear choices that might be quietly stealing your mobility, your comfort, and your confidence. And the surprising part is, most of these are things people wear every single day without thinking twice. Let me tell you about a man named Robert. He's 71, a retired mechanic, the kind of guy who spent his whole life on his feet. Strong, independent, always fixing something around the house. A few years ago, he started noticing a dull pain in his heel. Nothing too serious, just a little discomfort when he got out of bed in the morning. He ignored it. Then the pain spread. Walking became slower. He stopped going on his daily walks. Eventually, he slipped on a wet kitchen floor and fell. Thankfully, he didn't break anything, but that fall changed him, not just physically, but mentally. He became more cautious, more hesitant, less active. And when we looked at his daily habits, one thing stood out immediately. He lived in flip-flops. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Flip-flops? Really? They're just simple, comfortable sandals. That's exactly what Robert thought too. But here's what most people don't realize. Every time you take a step in flip-flops, your toes have to grip the sole to keep it from slipping off. It's a small movement, but you repeat it hundreds, even thousands of times a day. Over time, that changes the way you walk. Your stride shortens, your foot doesn't land the way it should, and that creates tension not just in your foot, but all the way up your leg. And then there's the lack of support. Flip-flops offer almost no arch support, no cushioning, no stability. Each step sends a small shock through your heel and into your joints. When you're younger, your body absorbs that impact without much trouble. But after 60, those repeated shocks start to add up. That's how conditions like plantar fasciitis begin. That sharp heel pain in the morning that makes you hesitate before taking your first step out of bed. That lingering ache that follows you throughout the day. Robert ended up needing months of therapy to recover, and all because of something he wore every day without a second thought. So if you've been wearing flip-flops around the house, to the store, or even just out in the yard, it might be time to reconsider. Comfort isn't always what it seems. Sometimes what feels easy in the moment can cost you later. And that brings us to something even more surprising. Something many people are wearing right now as they watch this. Worn-out sneakers. Now, sneakers feel safe, don't they? They're soft, supportive, designed for walking. They look like the healthiest choice you could make. But here's the hidden problem. Sneakers don't last nearly as long as most people think. Even if they look perfectly fine on the outside, the cushioning inside starts to break down much sooner than you'd expect. In fact, after about 6 months of regular use, a typical pair of sneakers can lose a significant portion of its shock absorption. And the tricky part is, you can't see it happening. From the outside, the shoes still look clean. The soles aren't worn through. There are no holes. So naturally, you think, why replace them? They're still good. But inside, the support is fading. The foam that once protected your joints is no longer doing its job. And with every step, your knees, your hips, and your back are taking on more stress than they should. I remember talking to a woman named Linda who was 68. She told me she had been dealing with knee pain for over a year. She tried everything, stretching, pain creams, even cutting back on her daily walks. Nothing seemed to help. Then one day, her daughter convinced her to replace her sneakers. Within 2 weeks, her knee pain started to ease. It wasn't her age. It wasn't her joints wearing out. It was her shoes. Think about that for a moment. Something as simple as replacing a pair of sneakers changed the way her entire body felt. Here's a quick way to check your own shoes. Take one of your sneakers and try to twist it gently. If it bends and twists easily, especially through the middle, it's likely lost its structural support. A good walking shoe should feel stable, only bending where your foot naturally bends, right at the ball of the foot. If it feels soft and flimsy all over, it may be time to let it go. And I know for many people that's not easy. Maybe you grew up learning to use things until they were completely worn out. Maybe you're on a fixed income and don't want to spend money unnecessarily. But here's something worth considering. Holding on to a pair of shoes for too long can cost far more in the long run. Pain, reduced mobility, even medical bills, all of that can start with something as simple as worn-out footwear. Now, as we keep moving forward, there's another type of footwear that feels incredibly comfortable, almost like a reward at the end of a long day. Something you probably slip into without even thinking, and it might be putting you at risk every single time you stand up. You know the feeling. You've been on your feet for a while, maybe doing chores, maybe just moving around the house, and the moment you sit down, all you want is comfort. So you slide your feet into those soft, familiar slippers waiting right beside your chair. They feel warm, easy, effortless. But here's something most people never stop to think about. Not all slippers are created equal, and some of them, especially the ones without a back, can quietly become one of the most dangerous things in your home. I'm talking about backless slippers. Now, they seem harmless. In fact, they're designed to feel convenient. You don't have to bend down, no straps, no laces, just slide your foot in and go. But that convenience comes at a cost. Every time you take a step in backless slippers, your foot has to work just a little harder to keep them on. Your toes grip, your stride shortens, your heel lifts earlier than it should, and your ankle loses stability without that support behind it. You may not even notice it happening, but your body does. Over time, this small change in how you walk can affect your balance. And here's the part that really matters. As we age, our ability to recover from a slight imbalance becomes weaker. What used to be a quick correction in your 40s can turn into a stumble, or even a fall, in your 60s or 70s. I once spoke with a woman named Carol, 76 years old, who told me she had worn the same style of backless slippers for over 20 years. She loved them, said they were the most comfortable thing she owned. One evening, she heard the doorbell ring. She stood up quickly, walked toward the stairs, and as she stepped down, her slipper shifted just enough for her foot to lose its grip. That was all it took. She fell, broke her wrist, and spent weeks recovering. But what affected her the most wasn't just the injury, it was the fear that came afterward. She told me, "I don't trust my own feet anymore," and that's something we don't talk about enough. It's not just the physical pain from a fall, it's the loss of confidence, the hesitation, the second-guessing every step, all from something as simple as a slipper. So if you're wearing backless slippers around the house, especially on tile or hardwood floors, it might be time to rethink that habit. Look for something with a closed back, something that holds your foot in place, even if it takes an extra second to put on. That small change can make a big difference in how stable you feel. And speaking of stability, let's talk about something that often goes unnoticed until it's too late: the bottom of your shoes, more specifically, slippery soles. Now, most people don't check the soles of their shoes very often. You put them on, you go about your day, and as long as they feel comfortable, you assume they're fine. But the truth is, the bottom of your shoes is what connects you to the ground. It's your only point of contact. And if that connection isn't secure, everything above it is at risk. Over time, the patterns on your shoe soles start to wear down. Those grooves that once gave you traction begin to flatten. Or maybe the shoes were designed with smooth soles to begin with, like certain dress shoes or loafers. Either way, the result is the same: less grip, and less grip means more risk. All it takes is a slightly wet kitchen floor, a damp bathroom tile, a bit of morning dew on your front steps. Suddenly, that solid step you expected turns into a slide. I remember a man named George, 73, who told me about a moment he'll never forget. He was standing in his kitchen, wearing his favorite pair of loafers. His wife had just wiped the counter, and a few drops of water had splashed onto the floor. He didn't see them. He took one step, and his foot shot forward. He didn't fall that time. He caught himself on the counter, but the way he twisted his body to stay upright left him with back pain that lasted for weeks. And that's another thing to keep in mind. You don't have to fall to get hurt. Sometimes the effort to prevent a fall can strain your muscles, your joints, your back. Now here's something simple you can try. Take one of your everyday shoes and place it on a smooth surface, like your bathroom tile. Gently press down and try to slide it forward. If it moves easily, that's a sign your shoes may not have enough grip. Shoes with good traction should resist that movement. They should feel stable, almost like they're holding onto the ground rather than gliding over it. It's a small detail, but it matters more than most people realize. And as we move along, there's another issue that's a little more subtle, but just as important. It's not about what's missing from your shoes. It's about how they fit, or more specifically, when they don't fit properly. Tight-fitting shoes. Now, a lot of people assume that if a shoe goes on, it fits. Maybe it feels a little snug, but you think it'll stretch out, or I've always worn this size. But here's something that surprises many people. Your feet change over time, not just in length, but in width. As the years go by, the structures in your feet, the ligaments, the tendons, start to relax. Your foot spreads out more than it used to. So even if you've worn the same size for decades, that size may no longer be right for you. And when you squeeze your foot into a shoe that's too tight, you're doing more than just causing discomfort. You're restricting blood flow. You're compressing nerves. You're changing the way your foot moves with every step. I spoke with a gentleman named Harold, who wore the same size dress shoes he had worn since his 40s. He told me they felt a bit snug, but he didn't think much of it. Then one day, after wearing them to a family event for several hours, he noticed something strange. His feet felt numb, not just tired, not just sore, numb. That numbness lasted for days. And during that time, he found himself stumbling more often, simply because he couldn't fully feel the ground beneath him. That's the hidden danger of tight shoes. When your sense of touch is reduced, your balance is affected. And when your balance is affected, your risk of falling increases. So if you've been sticking with the same shoe size for years, it might be worth taking a closer look. Pay attention to how your shoes feel at the end of the day, not just when you first put them on. If there's pressure, pinching, or discomfort, your feet may be trying to tell you something. And as we continue, there's one more habit that feels completely natural to many people. In fact, some even believe it's healthier. But for older adults, it can quietly increase the risk of injury in ways you might not expect. It's something that feels so natural, so simple, that most people never question it. Walking barefoot. Maybe you do it first thing in the morning, stepping out of bed onto the floor. Maybe you like the feeling of freedom, the idea that it's more natural, more connected. Some people even believe it strengthens the feet, and in younger years, that might be true. But as we get older, the reality changes in ways that aren't always obvious. When you walk barefoot, you lose the support and cushioning that your feet quietly depend on more and more with age. That natural padding under your feet, the one that used to absorb shock, has thinned. Your joints are more sensitive. Your balance isn't quite as sharp as it once was. So every step you take on a hard surface, tile, hardwood, even concrete, sends more force up through your body than it used to. You may not feel it right away, but your joints do. Your knees absorb it. Your hips compensate. Your lower back tightens. And over time, those small, repeated impacts can turn into chronic pain. And then there's something even more concerning. When you walk barefoot, you remove a layer of protection. I once spoke with a man named David, 74, who had mild diabetes. One morning, he stepped on something small in his kitchen. He barely noticed it, just a tiny sensation, nothing that seemed important. But because his nerve sensitivity wasn't what it used to be, he didn't realize he had actually cut his foot. That small cut became infected. What could have been avoided with a simple pair of supportive house shoes turned into weeks of treatment and limited mobility. That's the part many people don't think about. It's not just about comfort, it's about protection. It's about giving your feet the support they need to keep you steady, safe, and moving. So if you're used to going barefoot around the house, especially on hard floors, it might be worth reconsidering. A simple pair of supportive indoor shoes, ones with a secure fit and non-slip soles, can make a world of difference. Now, there's one last habit I want to talk about, and this one is incredibly common. In fact, most people don't even realize they're doing it. It seems practical, even smart, using one pair of shoes for everything. You find a pair that feels good, maybe they're comfortable, maybe they were a bit of an investment, and you think, these are my good shoes, I'll just wear them everywhere. So you wear them on your daily walks, around the house, out in the yard, maybe even to church or social events. It feels efficient. But here's the problem. Different activities place different demands on your feet. When you're walking for exercise, your feet need cushioning and forward motion support. When you're doing something like gardening or moving around uneven ground, your body needs more side-to-side stability. When you're inside your home, especially on smooth floors, you need grip and balance. one pair of shoes simply can't do all of that well. I remember a man named Frank, 70 years old, who proudly told me about his favorite sneakers. He wore them everywhere, said they were the most comfortable shoes he'd ever owned. But over time, those same shoes started causing problems. When he worked in his garden, they didn't give him enough stability when bending or turning. When he went for walks, the soles, worn down from outdoor use, didn't provide the grip they once had. And because he wore them constantly, they wore out faster than they should have. He thought he was saving money, but in reality, he was putting extra strain on his body every single day. And that's something worth thinking about. The right shoes don't just feel comfortable, they support you in the specific way you need for what you're doing. Sometimes having a few different pairs, one for walking, one for inside the house, one for outdoor tasks, can actually protect your mobility far more than relying on a single good pair. It's not about having more. It's about having the right support at the right time. And when you start making these small changes, something interesting happens. You begin to feel more stable, more confident. You move a little easier. Maybe you find yourself walking a bit farther, standing a bit longer, doing things you had started to avoid. Because here's the truth. Your footwear doesn't just affect your feet. It affects how you live, the way you move through your home, the way you go about your day. The confidence you feel stepping outside, knowing you're steady, supported, and safe. All of that starts from the ground up. So if any of these habits sound familiar, flip-flops, worn-out sneakers, backless slippers, slippery soles, tight shoes, going barefoot, or relying on one pair for everything, just know that you're not alone. These are incredibly common choices. Most people never think twice about them. But small changes can lead to big improvements. You don't have to overhaul everything overnight. Just start with awareness. Take a look at what you're wearing today. Pay attention to how your feet feel. Notice if there's discomfort, instability, or fatigue. Your body is always giving you signals. And when you listen to those signals, you give yourself the chance to stay active, independent, and confident for years to come. If any part of this resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced foot pain or a close call with a fall that made you think twice about your shoes? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone else more than you realize. And if you found this helpful, go ahead and give this video a like. It helps more people discover information that could truly make a difference in their daily lives. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more simple, practical ways to stay strong, steady, and independent as the years go on. Because no matter your age, it's never too late to make small changes that protect your health, your mobility, and your freedom. Here's to feeling steady on your feet and living your life with confidence every single day.